Hi everybody, welcome to the Museum of Glass. Today we're going to be working with our guest artist, John Torreano. He's a sculptor and a painter from New York City, and he'll be working with our resident team of glass blowers. So everything we're going to make will be John's design, but the actual making of the objects will be done by our team. So just to get you started, I'm going to give you just a very brief introduction to how glass blowing works. Everything that we do starts out in our glass furnaces, where you see the square holes in the steel wall and the doors closed. Those are our glass furnaces. There's two of them, one on each side of the studio. Behind those doors, there's a big ceramic tank. In that ceramic tank is 1,000 pounds of molten glass. We keep the molten glass at 2,100 degrees, and at that temperature, the glass is like honey. So if you can imagine a giant crock pot full of honey, that's what our glass furnace is like. When we want to get it out to make stuff, we take one of those steel pipes and we dip it in the molten glass like you dip one of these into a jar of honey. So we dip it in, twirl it around. A little bit of the molten glass sticks to the end of the pipe. The pipe itself is hollow, so when you blow, ball of glass on the other end blows up like a little balloon. If you want to make something larger, you dip it in, blow a little bubble, let it harden, and then you dip it in a second time, or a third time, or a fourth time, and just keep building up the glass in layers. All the glass that's in those furnaces is clear. It has no color. We buy our colored glass in various forms, and then we melt colored glass onto our clear glass. So for this, if you watch those guys over on the left, Sarah in the dark blue shirt and shorts, she's going to blow a bubble of clear glass. Sayuri in the gray shirt and black pants, she's heating up a chunk of colored glass, and we're going to melt the colored glass over the clear glass. So Sayuri has picked up two chunks of two different blues. She's going to heat that up until it's soft and gooey. Sarah's going to blow a bubble of clear glass from our furnace. And we're going to coat Sarah's bubble with the colored glass. So the things that we're making today are these sculptures designed by our guest artist, John Torreano. So all of them will have the same kind of form, but will have different colors and patterns on the surface. So just to introduce you to our guest artist, we have a little video called Meet the Artist. Can we play Meet the Artist?
Yes. Yes, he was a shiny old man. I'm John Torreano. I'm from New York City. I have this theory about the attraction of glass, and I think we're genetically hardwired to respond positively to sparkly and shiny things. These are all the teardrops that are the raindrops of the glass gods. It's part of my, just kidding, agricultural aesthetic theory. When you reach in to take a gather, it's like you're reaching into the center of the earth, right? And you're doing something with it. You're making a shiny object. If you imagine a time when, we were just primitive peoples, and you would see a sparkly thing, it wouldn't be very often. And it would be magical because, why? because you could hold a piece of the sun in your hand. And the sun is everything, right? No sun, no life. I've always thought of myself as a painter first and foremost. With painting, you have to be able to communicate with one shape, something that's three-dimensional. I don't think any artist, for example, can make art without being involved with glass in some way. Maybe it's just with slides of their work, but it's about looking, and it's about seeing, and glass is a very important tool for that. For me, I've never really been a glass artist, but I've always had glass in my art ever since about 1969, I would say, when I was using dots to create the illusion of space, kind of like sky, though I didn't think of it as sky at first. Then I started to look at photographs of the sky in order to get more interesting configurations and distributions of dots. And then because I was looking at those, I started reading about it, and I started making relationships between astronomical ideas of space and painterly ideas of space. And I found that the astronomical ideas gave me more license than the kind of formalist Greenbergian ideas about space did. The project that we're working on here at the museum, I started it a couple of weeks ago at Pilchuck, where I wanted to see what I could do in a columnar shape. Ever since about 1974, on and off, I've been making these column paintings that are half-round lozenge shapes of different sizes. What I tried to do with those is create a paradox between the physicality of them coming out from the wall and the illusionness of them, both physically and visually. And I wanted to see if those ideas could translate to glass. And in a way, I'm trying to make them as close to a painting as you can.
Yeah, and you had a recipe kind of written out.
Yeah. I'm used to working on my own all the time, and it takes a lot more energy to get the momentum going on your own than it does when you have a crew and a group of people. And so one of the pleasures I take from working in a place like the museum here is the kind of communal energy that helps support the process of making work. You don't question it so much. You just go in, you get up, you have your coffee, and you start making work. And that's refreshing. You see what I mean by them being figurative, or beings of some kind? Like post-apocalyptic, but with really nice outfits.
Does anybody have any questions? These things are running about an hour and a half. One. Overnight. Overnight. So over on the far left, Sarah and Sayuri are laying colors onto the bubble. We're putting it on in little pads of color because Mr. Torreano doesn't want to cover the bubble entirely, wants to leave a few little clear spots. So we're mushing on little pads of the two different blues, and we're going to leave some spots uncovered. Mr. Torreano is laying out a pattern in chips of colored glass, and we're going to roll this bubble in those chips. Those chips will melt on and make blobs of colored glass. We're going to have a different pattern that's laid out on that steel table, and that's going to go on the very final outside of the sculpture. So there'll be 3 different layers of color. There'll be the one that Sarah and Sayuri are applying now, the one that Mr. Torreano is laying out over here, and finally the one on the steel table. And then start to drop rapidly. We're working at the bench, probably somewhere between about 1800 and about 400. We're making sculptures like on that pedestal. Low little bubble, letting hard. She just did use of water. Nope. We have some wooden tools that we use, and we keep those and store those in a bucket of water so that the wood is wet and it doesn't burn. No, no. Sometimes we dip the glass in water to make a crackly texture. So Sarah's letting her bubble cool off and stiffen a bit, and we're going to dip it in our big tank of molten glass and coat it again. So we'll add a layer of clear molten glass. It's going to look orange. The orange glow you're going to see is the glow from the heat. The glass we're adding is as clear as your eyeglasses. We'll dip it into the furnace, the glass furnace. It's going to drip a little excess off into that can. When you see the glass drip off the end of that bubble, you can see how fluid the molten glass really is. It's just like honey. So every time we dip the glass into the big oven and coat it, it's called taking a gather. G-A-T-H-E-R. So now Sarah's going to add some little chunks of colored glass. Hot glass sticks to hot glass. We've preheated the little chunks on that hot plate. So each of those little chips of glass will melt in and form a blob of color on the surface. Can we put up some of Mr. Torreano's artwork up on the big screen? So Mr. Torreano is mostly a painter and sculptor. He's not a glass worker by trade. He has worked with glass at times throughout his career, but it's not his main thing. He's worked as a guest artist at the Pilchuck Glass School. He worked with Flora Mace and Joey Kirkpatrick to make a number of glass gem shapes like you see here. He originally started out using small glass gems in his paintings and then went on to make the gems themselves into individual sculptures. A lot of the painting that he does is influenced by astronomical images, things you would see from things like the Hubble telescope. So galaxies, nebulas, stars, all those kinds of things. So in some sense, the little color spots relate to that on these sculptures. So most museums you go to, all the artists are dead. We got a live one here, so I'm going to let you hear from Mr. Torreano, tell you a little bit about what he's thinking.
I'm an artist that uses glass, but I don't think of myself as a glass artist. But I've had glass as part of my artwork since 1970. When I first started using little glass gems to spark the field of my paintings that were based on images of space, outer space. So I use imagery from the Hubble Space Gallery, if you've ever been to it. It has these amazing images. And in addition to actually using the images that I draw from and so on, I even have a few sketches I could show you. I like to I align myself with the theory about curvature in space and other ideas about space. It makes more sense for my ideas about painting than painting theory did. So I did that all along. So a lot of the shapes that I use have something to do with some of the paradox. What's the plural for paradox? Paradi? Something like that? Paradoxes that exist. For example, if you imagine the Big Bang Theory, right? You imagine, you picture yourself as seeing a whole bunch of matter, galaxies, whatever, expanding out. And then imagine, well, where are you in relationship to that expanding universe? You're here, it's over there. So by being finite, like another object, you're literally, in your imagined space, shaping the implied shape of the universe. So you're here, it's here, so that's the shape. Anyway, the idea of perceiving matter coming out is both has a shape to it, but you can also see the illusion into it. That paradox fascinates me. So very early on, back in about 1975, 73, I made a universe painting. I found this like wooden ball. I thought, I'll make a universe painting, and I put jewels in it for stars and galaxies, and I painted little dots. And I had this on my refrigerator next to a souvenir of the Empire State Building. Well, one thing led to another, and somebody commissioned me to make a whole bunch of universe paintings for a Cadillac showroom, believe it or not, for a holiday decoration. So I made big ones, little ones, and installed them. Well, this idea of being able to look into a space that also presents itself as an object, that paradox has stuck with me all along. So these column shapes that we're making are a takeoff on a series of column shapes I've made as paintings for a long time that hang on the wall as half rounded. And what I liked about those was the same thing I just said. You can look in them, and at the same time they have a presence, a physical presence. So when you feel the physicality of them, then you can't see the illusion. When you see the illusion, you can't feel the physicality of them. Oh, you did it. You took those, then I'm going to make some more. Excusez-moi. I'll be back if you want.
Thank you. Let's have a hand for our guest artist. Duty calls. So tomorrow at 2 o'clock, oh, this thing is loud. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, Mr. Torreano is going to give a talk here in the hot shop. Most of you won't be here, but you can see it on the internet. So if you go to museumofglass.org and click on Experience the Hot Shop, you'll be able to see the talk from your home in your fuzzy slippers. And it'll start at about 2 o'clock or as close to that as we finish the glasswork. I always find it more interesting to look at artwork after I know a little bit about the person, what he was thinking, what they were trying to accomplish. So I always like the work better after I hear that. Not always, but most of the time. You guys have any questions? Mr. Torreano is just crushing up some colored glass to make little chips that we're going to embed in the surface. Big tank we melted all clear. The glass that we use is a little different than the glass that goes into bottles. The glass that goes into bottles is made to harden very quickly, so a machine can make 1,000 bottles an hour. Our glass is made to harden slowly, so we can shape it by hand. The bottle glass is too stiff for us, and it hardens too quick. As basically the percentage of sand versus what's the other? The three components, basic components in glass: sand, soda ash, and lime. Sand is the bulk of it. Soda ash lowers the melting temperature of the sand, and the lime stabilizes the chemical. The more sand there is in it, the stiffer it'll be, the quicker it'll harden. The more soda ash in, the softer it'll be, and the longer it'll take to harden. So we're picking up a final layer of our chips of glass. We do it on we put on the bigger chips, we do it on a heated table so that when the molten glass touches the heated chip, it doesn't shock it and break. You guys have any questions? Okay, these ovens are called annealing ovens. They're electric ovens. Each day we heat them up to 920 degrees. We fill them up with all the work we make during the day, and at night we slowly turn them down to room temperature. Oh, well, I mean, these things are running about an hour, 15 hour and a half to make them, and then we'll cool them overnight. But we won't start the cooling process till the end of the day. So what we're making now, probably 9 or 10 tomorrow morning will be cool. But we're not working on it all that time. The smaller ones are about 9 pounds. The bigger ones are about 12. They're hollow. Glass weighs 2.5 times as much as water. So the gray pad in Ben's hand, Ben is the man in the light blue shirt, is just folded up newspaper soaked in water. As long as the newspaper is wet, the paper doesn't burn too much, nor does it leave any marks as he shapes the glass. Yes. It stays melted 24/7. So now we have all the glass we need to make our sculpture. It's hollow, but it's quite thick. We're going to now heat it up and blow it up to its full size and shape. Each time we heat it up, it only stays soft for about a minute. So we heat it up in the glory hole. We do whatever shaping we can while it's soft. And then we go back and heat it up again. So right now, Ben is squeezing the glass and making a sharp crease in it. That sharp crease is the place where he'll be able to break the glass away from the metal pipe. The tool in his hand that he's making the crease with is called the jacks, and making that crease is called jacking it down. So he's just given himself a place to break it off. It's kind of like tearing a coupon out of a newspaper. You make a nice sharp crease. When you pull on it, the tear goes along the crease, or at least you hope it does. When he swings the glass like that, the glass is soft and he's trying to make the bubble longer. So when he swings it, centrifugal force will stretch that bubble out. So we're rolling the glass on what we call the newspaper marver. It's just a sheet of plywood covered with several sheets of wet newspaper. We're doing it so we can straighten out the sides of the sculpture. If we roll it on the newspaper, we don't leave any marks. If we rolled it on the steel table, it would leave marks. Yes? I'm guessing 11, 12 pounds. But it feels like a whole lot more because it's way out on the end of that pole. So it's kind of like picking up a bowling ball with a fishing pole. If you hold the bowling ball here, it's not a problem. If you try to pick it up with a fishing pole, that's another thing entirely. So I misled you. I just talked to the glassblower, and they say these things are bigger than the ones we used to be making. So these things weigh between 18 and 20 pounds. So I can't work in a carnival. I'm not good at guessing weights. So. There's two ways in which we heat up the glass. Sometimes we heat it up in the big round oven. Sometimes we heat it up with our torch. When we heat it up with a torch, it allows us to focus the heat in a particular place. We can make just that part of the glass extra hot and therefore extra soft. So we can shape one part of the glass without disturbing the rest of it. You guys have any questions? Good.
How much did you say that one weighs that he's working on?
You
It's
said
bigger than-
18, 20 pounds. I said it wrong first time.
Okay. Okay. How hot? Okay, good.
2,300 degrees. These run about an hour and a half. How? Say that again? How hot does it have to be? Well, when the glass comes straight out of the furnace, the hot gooey glass, it's 2,100 degrees. Yes? Yes. It's 6 times what it takes to cook a turkey. So imagine how hot your mom's oven is when she cooks a turkey. Multiply it by 6. Oh, ow.
It was clearly not 21.
No, that was it. Oh, yeah. I got the customers they want. Now they're pretty much concentrated on straightening things out. Yes. Oh, we melt different colors of glass on it. The glass comes in all sorts of beautiful colors. You can melt on reds and blues and pinks. Would you like to win a piece of glass to take home with you? Okay, here. Wait till you hear. Don't say yes till you hear what the deal is. So here's the deal. You tell me a subject that you like in school. I ask you a question. If you get the question right, you get a piece of glass. Does that sound fair? Okay. So tell me a subject that you like and tell me what grade you just finished. Math? All the colors you're seeing are distorted by the heat. So the next thing we're going to do is drill a small hole in the bottom of the sculpture. We're going to put another pipe over that hole so we'll be able to blow into the sculpture and inflate it while we shape the other side. So we're going to... Gabe, over on the left, is preparing the second pipe. He's coated the end with molten glass, but he's left the opening in the pipe open. So when we stick it over the hole, it'll act as two things. One, it'll act as a handle to hold the sculpture, but it will also be able to inflate the form as we shape it. So it's called a blow punty. Do we have a blow punty drawing? Might take them a while to find this. A little tap, and off it comes. The connection's still a little soft, so it takes some real expert jiggling by Gabe Feenan. Keep it on center. Back in the old days, your contract to be a glassblower would be like $10 a day. So right now they're just trying to make sure that's connected on center. Working with glass is like working on a pottery wheel or working on a wood lathe. The work spins and you hold the tools against it as it spins. So it's very important that the object is centered if you want it to come out symmetrical. We don't always want it to come out symmetrical, but this time we do. You guys have any questions? Sure. What's what called? What he's making?
No, no. Is it a kiln? Like we know when you burn.
Well, the brown one is called the glory hole, and the one where the doors closed, where we keep the big tanks of glass, that's called the glass furnace. Yeah, all the round ones are glory holes. Furnace is like a pot of soup on your stove. It's on simmer, and the glory hole is a little hotter. You can heat things up quickly. Yep. No, we keep the glass furnaces, the ones with molten tanks of molten glass, they stay on 24/7. The glory hole gets shut off at 5 when we quit. An hour. Yeah, it takes about an hour. Yep. Yep. Could we put up the? Oh well. A minute. Can we put up the glass furnace diagram briefly? So that's what the furnaces look like behind those doors. And can we put up the glory hole diagram? The glory holes are just a brick barrel with a gas burner in the side. And it's just a hot chamber to heat and soften the glass while we work on it. Thank you. So we're going to squeeze down the opening at the top. And we'll cut off that little end. Has anybody got any questions? Hi, how are you doing? Good. Good, good. Oh, 10 years on and off. I'm part-timer. Do you guys have any questions?
It's just wet newspaper. That's it. Wow.
Why are you blowing the tube? The tube makes it, it blows up like a balloon and makes it bigger. So right now, they've almost got the shape that they want. So they just blow it a little tiny bit just to keep it inflated while they shape it.
So how much does something like that run?
How does it cost? I have no
Because
idea.
of the size of it and all. I mean,
It's mostly the reputation of the artist.
okay.
If I paint a sunflower
Right.
at 50, well, the guest artist takes it home with him and he puts it in his art gallery in New York. Yeah, but the guest artist is the guy with the camera. So it's his design.
Directing them.
Well, it's his design. And the rest of the people are our resident team of glass blowers. When we have an artist doing glass making themselves, they come up with the design and our guys make it. If they're a glass maker themselves, then they take the lead as a team
So how did you ship that? How did you get that to you
in a
guys?
big box.
Very carefully. So is it fragile or is it like dense and it has
It's pretty stiff, but it is glass, so if you drop it, it can break.
Oh, that's question to you is, these guys work for you. Are they interns or are they professional?
Oh, they're professionals. He's got the guy in the blue shirt. He's been blowing glass for 25 years.
Wow. So why don't you all dress that up?
She's going to take the finished sculpture to our annealing oven. When she grabs that sculpture, it'll be 1,000 degrees.
1,000 degrees if she grabs it. Okay, we got one more question, babe?
So we're getting ready to take the sculpture off the metal rod. When we take it off the metal rod, it'll be about 1,000 degrees. At that temperature, the glass will be hard, and we'll put it in our annealing oven where it'll be cooled slowly overnight. So we're going to take a little tweezers, dip them in water, drip some water on the joint between the sculpture and the metal rod. A little tap, off it comes, and into our annealing oven to cool slowly. So let's have a hand for John Torreano and the Museum of Glass Hot Shop team, Ben Cobb, Sarah Gilbert, and Gabe Feenan. And Sayuri Fukuda. So in the center, you see Sarah Gilbert. She's rolling her hot glass bubble over some little chips of colored glass. We'll melt them in, and those are going to make spots of color. This is what I was thinking. Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, if the thing that you drill through is the top of the pedestal,
Right.
and you secure it.
That's how I did it. This plate underneath, this is the adjustment pad. So you can screw this down to where usually what I did was I put a cut place was actually this, and the top was where the regular outlet for the rest of the. Now that's a great idea. Cleaning up on that would be better.
Yeah, so after you get,
Because this is all threaded. This just threads right out where you want it. Tighten it.
yeah, I think that it'll be more stable if it can wiggle.
You mean because of the wood?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's held on two places, it's going to be that's against the rock. Or you can use a T-nut. You know what T-nuts are?
What are these?
It's a threaded tube, and it has a little flange,
Right.
and it has
Oh. And then you
little
put that through
prongs.
the top.
You put it into the drilled hole, and you pound it in with a hammer.
And then you put the threaded rod through and
Through the
then
T-nut.
this would, that's a good idea. Then you wouldn't have to have the bolt of it. You wouldn't have to have a plate down there.
Yeah, listen, I would if I was making it, I would secure it some way with either two nuts, two T-nuts, or T-nuts. I would secure it on both sides, so to get boom. But I would, if you take if the wood thing is this pedestal top, and you could fasten it down with four screws to it, then it would essentially appear.
Yeah.
But if you make a base and you put it on top of that, then people see that. But if the base is the top,
No, that's what I was thinking. The base is, this is the base. You've got the top, the mold, rod, nobody knows. Unless they see it enough, obviously they will. But depending on,
they won't see it.
like this one.
I doubt anyone would see it unless they knew it was there and they were looking for it.
These have such nice, these have nice depth to them. You can feel all the layers. I see that. Good, how you doing?
Do you guys have any questions? Yes. No, that one is 2,300 degrees. So considerably hotter. None. The glass is in the one next to it. This is called the glory hole. It's just a hot chamber for reheating and softening the glass while we work on it. There's no glass in it. Glass is in the one where the door is closed. Behind that door is a ceramic tank with 1,000 pounds of molten glass.
How do they make it into the animal shape?
How do they make it to the animal shape? I can show you a little video. Can we play the pony video? So look up there. This is how they make it into the animal shapes. Going back and forth. You got to wear a that has two parts to it. We'll make part number one, put it, make part number two, and then we'll pull part number one out of the garage, heat it up a little extra, and stick the two together. So this stuff, this will keep stuff warm while we're working. Actually, that's wrong what they written there. It's actually too late. So we have a cold side and a hot side. The burners are over here. This is the hot side. This is the cold side. If we're going to store something for a long time, we put it on the cold side. And before we bring it out into the cold air, we'll move it over to the hot side, heat it up a little extra, then we'll bring it out. Yes, sir.
Does the how can you recycle glass? Is it different to use glass that's been heated and cooled a second time versus just
No, glass is like wax. You get it hot, it gets soft. You get it cold, it gets hard. You get it hot, it gets soft again. It
Alright,
goes on
I was wondering if
forever.
it's like metal where you have like varying amounts of carbon content, and that would change the behavior of like how soft or how
No,
brittle?
it's just more like wax or butter.
Huh. Okay. So
It just gets soft when it's hot, cold when it's hard.
so when she
doesn't
pulls it
change
out of the
chemically at
furnace
all.
and then drips off all the extra not wax, glass.
Right.
So that can then be reused.
Yeah, that goes back in the furnace.
Okay. What if you add color to it? Is the color added by impurities or?
Well, most of the things that color glass are metal.
Oh.
Different metals give you different colors.
Okay. So,
Not everything that colors glass is a metal,
so
but
like
most of them are.
Like
So
the colors
cobalt.
in fireworks.
What?
Like the colors in fireworks. Like
Yeah,
magnesium
sort
or
of.
cobalt. Will add different.
Yeah, sort of.
Alright.
Not the chemistry's not quite the same, but so cobalt makes blue, chromium makes green, a little bit of gold makes pink, a lot of gold makes a beautiful ruby red.
Alright. So then is it possible to recycle glass that has had color added to it?
Yes, it is possible. We can't do it here
Right.
because our big tank where we melt the glass is all clear. So we can't throw bits of red and purple and blue in there.
Right. It'd be like adding a
You
red
just
shirt
muck
to
it
your
up and
laundry.
turn it into a brown mess.
Yeah.
But if you had a bunch of red, if you had a furnace full of red glass and you had some red waste glass, you could just throw it back in and melt it again.
Oh, and I suppose you could then get it homogeneous and then control the density of how red or not, right? Like really concentrated versus really light red.
Not sure what you mean.
Because if you had if I had red glass, I'm wondering how deeply.
well, it depends on how much red colorant you put in there.
Yeah.
So if it's 1/2 of 1%, it's very light. If it's 5%, it's very dark.
Right.
But it
Okay.
doesn't change when you melt it or remelt it.
Right.
It stays the same.
Okay. Got it. It would be the sum of its parts. If I had a 1.5% versus a 5%, and I put it in the same melt, it would either have to be mixed, I assume, to have a average out.
Yeah. I
Right.
mean, but it doesn't. When you melt it, it doesn't change anything.
Right.
It's just if it was dark blue when you took it out and you melt it again, it's still dark blue.
Right. You'd have to add something to make it more blue or less blue.
Yep. You have to. Yeah.
Okay. Does that mean you can anticipate the color? Because
Yeah. If you know, the chemistry is. I'm giving you a fairly simplified version of the chemistry, but the chemistry can get kind of complex. But and all sorts of things like copper. If you cook it one way, it turns turquoise. If you cook it a different way, it turns blood red. Same copper.
Right. Because of copper hardening, how you can brew a metal.
No, it's
Different. Okay.
how much chemistry do you know?
I failed.
Oh, okay. Well, there's two kinds of chemical reactions, one called oxidation and one called reduction. If you reduce the copper, it turns the blood red. If you oxidize the copper, it turns turquoise.
Oh, that's cool. I was watching one of the videos in the art gallery, and it was really interesting to see all these attempts. And a couple, when one piece was put down, it just kind of shattered, and people were like, How often does I guess it depends on the complexity of the piece, but sometimes you just accept.
Yeah, no, if you're faint of heart, this is not the job for you.
Got it.
Glass can be very finicky, temperamental, and you never know when it's going to do it.
Okay. Yeah. Huh.
That's part of its charm as well.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely is that.
There's always an element of chance and mystery.
Yeah. I was going to say, it seems like cooking, where you can have a plan to do this one thing, but you have to roll with the punches.
There you go. Yeah, it's a lot like cooking.
Is that like an oxyacetylene torch?
Oxypropane.
Oxypropane, cool. And I guess it would be what water cooled candles and everything. 'Cause it seems like everything around here would be really toasty.
Yeah, it's not. They don't get as toasty as you would imagine.
All right.
Things do get warm, but not the way common sense would lead you to believe.
Okay, cool. Thank you for the
You're
demo.
welcome. So we're drilling a hole in the base of the sculpture. We're going to stick another pipe over that hole and be able to blow into the form after we've removed it from the original pipe. So we're attaching the punty, the second steel rod. This is going to act as a handle to hold the glass from the bottom while we shape the top. We're going to break the glass away from the original pipe. We'll drip some water where we want it to break. We drip the water off those tweezers. Here we go. Little tap, and off it comes. So we're almost done with this. Everything that we make here has to be cooled off slowly. If we don't cool it off slowly, if we let it just cool on its own, it will cool too quickly and unevenly and it will break. So we're going to take it off the pipe and put it in the annealing oven. So that concludes our demonstrations for today. Thank you so much for coming. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, enjoy your evening.